Hi, this is Monica Duarte. I am a brand identity alchemist and spiritual coach, and I'm here to assist you in transforming your life and brand from the inside out. In today's video, this is part 2 of the video that I created last week, which talks about the 7 reasons why I left the New Age movement and how I created a more balanced and spiritual path or life. In this video, I'm going to focus on what I did to create more of a balanced spiritual path. But before we get started on that, please make sure to subscribe. If you're interested in anything spiritual, in transformation, in transforming your life. If you also have a business that you're looking to gain more clarity about branding, or just even overall, use spirituality as a foundation for your business, then I do share videos about that. So please make sure to subscribe so you'll get my newest videos, and make sure to like my video to help me grow my channel. The reason I wanted to share what I did to help create a more balanced, healthy spiritual path is to just give you ideas and tools that I use that work for me, where again, my goal was to create more of a more grounded, more balanced spiritual path. And if you haven't watched my video, the first part of this series, please make sure to do that, so that you understand why I left the New Age movement and why I kind of walked away from it. And I'll post that link below so that you can watch that. So if any of these tools or processes work for you, I definitely welcome you to work with them and learn about them. And if they don't, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what to do or to change your mind. That's something that you have to do on your own and be ready for. So the first thing that I did to create a more balanced, more healthy spiritual path is that I learned to only work with God. Again, I use the word God because I feel comfortable using that word. But if you want to replace it with creator, with spirit, and in the Native American tradition, we use the word spirit a lot. So you can definitely use that. I don't have an issue with the word God. I don't have the negative feelings that sometimes people put in, project onto that word. So I'm going to use the word God. So, just giving you a heads up, but you can replace it with whatever you want. Everything that I did or started doing, I always brought God into that. So for example, like some of the, New Age tools are like maybe working with oracle cards. So when I would go to and I still go to metaphysical stores because I do love going, but I'm very selective. I always pray before I go. And then I always pray, I tune in to, God, and, pray that I'm guided to the right, oracle card deck, that will help me and assist me. And so that's how I kind of navigate that. And also I do love to buy crystals. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. When I select crystals, I always connect with God to guide me to pick the right crystals for me. So again, I just learned to incorporate and bring God into everything that I do, even from like literally waking up in the morning or when I go to sleep. Like I work to always stay connected to God in every aspect of my life. And that's been a real, a big changer for me, because one of the things in the New Age movement is that people are open to spirits. And although, some spirits can be harmful and some spirits can actually be good, helpful and that kind of stuff. I feel like if I can go directly to God, why would I need to go through, through a spirit to go to God? Like I believe even, when I was raised Catholic, that I didn't have to go through a priest to talk to God. I mean, I started talking to God when I was little, like since I was like 2 or 3. So for me, that worked better because then I can just go directly to God and have that connection and that guidance instead of going through some, spirit or whatever, or, ancestor that could or could not be, of my greatest good. And then what I did too is when I do work with, for example, like I have power animals that I work with, and I do have, spirit guides, but I always pray that God guides them. I always do that. I never idolize them. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I always put God first, and then everything that I do is, for me, I always ask God to come through. And obviously, if you're doing something that's not of God, like, you'll know because it won't feel right. So that's why, for me, that was a really big changer, because it just helped me create more of that grounded, more of that like protective, essence or feeling, where I felt safer to kind of explore, the spiritual stuff in a way that worked for me, and that again felt grounded, and just overall just balanced. The second thing that I did is that I started practicing cleansing my energy. And I know this sounds kind of like whatever, maybe, but I'm an empath, and I tend to pick up people's energy, quite fast and a lot. And at that time when I started in, my spiritual path, I didn't really know that. So sometimes I would, tune into people's stuff, whatever they were feeling. And sometimes I would take that on. And so I had to learn to set healthy boundaries. And one of the ways that I did that is to learn to cleanse my energy and my space. And at some point I will make a video on how to do that. But just right off the bat, one of the easiest ways to do that is to sage. And you can also pray, you can pray to God. Like, prayer is always, a powerful tool to help you, stay connected with spirit. But I did learn how important it is, especially if you're working with spiritual stuff, to always cleanse your space and cleanse your, your energy field. Like, even when you buy crystals, you have to make sure you cleanse them. Anything that you buy that's spiritually oriented is super important that you cleanse the energy, because, old energy, negative energy, and even entities can get stuck. And, it doesn't just happen in the spiritual world. It actually happens naturally in the regular world as well. For example, like, there's times where maybe you're walking by, and there's a house and you get the really, really, really creepy vibes. And that could be that there's either a spirit attached to it, or just negative energy attached to it. And you don't have to be spiritual to feel that, or to even be working with spiritual stuff for that to happen. So generally, it's just really important to remember to cleanse your energy, because everything's made out of energy. So we want to make sure that, especially if you're empathic and intuitive, that what you're surrounding yourself around is actually yours and not somebody else's. So the third thing that I did to help create a more balanced spiritual path is I started to research and look for practices that were more grounding and more balanced, and that taught me how to go within more, instead of, again, focusing on changing my outer world, like going within to understand myself more, and to get to know myself more and have that stronger connection with God and understand my relationship with God. So I'm going to share some of the tools that I use now, and I've used for quite a while, but especially right now. So I'll share that. I'm probably not going to go into much detail about each of these, processes or or practices. But I will share briefly. So if you're interested, you're always welcome to, again, you do your research and find people that are, that are experts, or that are practicing these specific practices. So again, the first thing that I do, and I still do this, and this is so important for me in my spiritual path, is I pray. So for me, prayer is not about asking things from God. I mean, you can definitely ask for assistance, but to me, prayer, I see it more as praying with God. So, when I pray, I pray first thing in the morning. And what I do is I tune in to that essence that is in me, in my being, that's connected to God. And I go there to just, connect to that energy. So when I start off my day, like, I start out from that foundation. I also do pray throughout the day, a few times, where I basically do that. And then sometimes, like, if I'm having a hard day or I'm dealing with somebody that's difficult, I will pray, but I don't pray as like, oh God, please give me this or give me that. Like, I pray more as, thank you for helping me figure out this problem with this person. So more like affirming it instead of, lacking, I guess you would say. So that's super basic. And doing that repetitively every day does keep you in that energy, and it helps you, it guides you to understand when you are connected to God, like the difference between when you're actually operating from that connection with God and when you're operating from your ego. So the more that you do that, the more that you can tell the difference. And then little by little, you can start to kind of let go of that need to live through the ego and live more from this wholesome, spiritual, solid anchor of where God resides in us. The other practice that I do is I do what's called A Course in Miracles, which is a book, but it's a course. So for me, that book was very transformative because, again, it's like a book, but it's actually a course that you do throughout the whole year. And the whole idea is that it helps to teach you how to see yourself the way God sees you and not the way that your ego sees you. And for me, that really helped me a lot. And it does go into depth more. It talks about God and it talks about Jesus and the Holy Spirit in ways that are very different from what the Bible talks about. And I know some people will not like that, but for me, like when I read that book and I did the practices, it really helped me, and it did feel right to me because it helped me to have a more grounded, more genuine connection with God and with Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And so now, because of that book, I incorporate them into my life and everything that I do. So if you're interested in that, I highly suggest that you maybe, the Course in Miracles can be a little bit, it can be a book that can be a little bit difficult for some people to read. So sometimes it's good to read books by authors that have done, read the book and kind of mastered it. And, explain, like they can explain what the course is in simple ways and then go into the book. And that's what I did. I started off, Gary Renard, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. It's called The Disappearance of the Universe. I think that's the book. I'm sorry. I'll put the link below. And so that was my intro to the Course in Miracles. And when I read that, then I read the Course in Miracles, and it just made sense to me. Like it felt like I knew this information forever. So if you're interested in that, I would say, definitely buy the book. But also if you start to read it and it doesn't make sense, I would suggest to maybe start off with a book that's a little bit more simple, like by somebody that's actually studied the course. And there are several authors, that focus on this specific work with the Course in Miracles. So if you're interested in that, I highly suggest that. And also with me, when I do spiritual coaching, I do work from that foundation of A Course in Miracles too. So the next tool or healing practice that I use now in my life that's helped me create a more balanced, grounded spiritual path is working with crystals. And I know, some people in the New Age movement do work with crystals, but for me, the reason why I felt really strong pull to work with crystals is because they are connected to the earth. And I love the planet. I love just being in nature. So to me, working with crystals is more about connecting with the planet. Again, when I work with crystals, I don't, idolize them. Like I think they're beautiful and I love them. But I don't treat them like the way that I would treat God in that sense. Like I always, when I buy a crystal, I always cleanse it first and then I pray over it. And I actually do have holy water that I, put and I pray over it. And then I direct it to be guided by God, for whatever intention that I'm feeling, pulled to work with it for. So I do that, and that's how I feel safe and more balanced in working with them. And again, just because they are connected to earth, so it just creates more of this grounded feeling for me working with them in that way. Another practice that I started to do, and I was kind of doing before, but I've gotten way more into it and more into detail, is understanding trauma and understanding trauma healing. And so one of the ways that I've been doing that is actually through therapy. Like I've been going to a therapist that specializes in trauma healing. And it's been really eye-opening, to understand how trauma works, because in the New Age movement, people talk about trauma, but they don't really understand what they're talking about. And what I mean is that our bodies and beings are so sensitive to everyday life that literally we could, hit ourselves like on like a door or something, and that causes trauma, and that trauma gets stored in our body. And then the way that we try to cope with it, we build a system to try to cope with that, and that system operates with us for a whole life until we realize, like, hey, I'm doing this because this is how I'm coping from that trauma that I experienced. And one of the things that is dangerous with some people that practice like trauma healing in the New Age movement that are not really trained properly. And I feel like, if you're going to do trauma, you definitely want to get at least a certification in it by a reputable organization. Or I know sometimes universities will offer certifications if that's what you want to just focus on. And some people do go to the extent of actually becoming having a master's and becoming a therapist and focusing just on trauma, if that's something you want to do. But I know some people, they don't either have that kind of money to be spending because it's quite expensive, or they're just looking to just have that extra support with their practice. So there could be a certification you could take, or just read books. If you're not looking to help other people with trauma, you could just read books about trauma from people that actually know what they're doing. So what I was going to say is that some people will the spiritual movement or the New Age movement has a tendency to want to heal traumas, but they don't understand what energies or what world they're working in the sense where you can't not just directly go to a trauma and heal it. That's not how trauma gets healed. There's layers and layers and layers of systems that we created in our psyche. Like literally, like we have the trauma and then we create a system to protect that. And then maybe another system to protect that layer, and another system to protect that layer. So you have to understand that there's those systems, and that when you start to go into the trauma, if you don't go in carefully and truly understand how like healing trauma works, and you start to dig into that system, you can actually cause more harm and create another trauma or reactivate that trauma because you disturb the whole system. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, you can actually cause more harm. So it's really important to understand how trauma works, and not just literally go with somebody that says, oh, I worked on I healed my own trauma and I can help you. Like, that's awesome if you work with, if that person worked on their own trauma, but they have to get some kind of education to understand how traumas work. Because it's one thing to work on yourself, and it's another thing to work with another person that you're trying to help, and you can literally hurt them or damage them if you don't know what you're doing. So if you're looking to do, trauma work, like definitely get educated. Don't go and work with, whoever. Just make sure that you really, you're being very careful, because this is really delicate. This is like really sacred space, and you have to respect it as sacred space. You can't just work with anybody and then they, cause more harm. That's how valuable this is. So for me, like working on my traumas has really helped me to understand this. Like before that, I didn't even know these layers, and it's helped me to understand that, and to understand, sometimes, for example, we may say a word, and that could be an extension of a trauma. So it's been helping me to understand, like, oh, that word that I've been saying is an extension of that trauma. And then learning how to be gentle with myself and my system to be able to heal it in a very gentle, very loving way. So the next practice that I've started to do, and I've actually did kind of do a little bit when I started on my spiritual path, but I kind of stopped. And then now I'm like really going back into it and really learning more about it, is shamanism. So doing shamanic practices, because again, in my previous video, or one of my videos, I talked about how I get messages in my dreams. I have really profound dreams. And so it's really important for me to understand that, because our unconscious communicates to us through our dreams. So if you can understand, if you can practice understanding that world, you can actually understand your awakened world more and learn how to navigate it better. So shamanism has been a very valuable asset for me. Now, I want to say with shamanism, I know there's different types of shamanism, and there's, in shamanism, some people use plants to alter their state, their mind. I don't do that. I personally don't believe in that. I mean, I know that it helps people, but for me, that doesn't work because I'm actually quite sensitive. So if I take anything like that, it actually it causes more harm to me. It makes me feel very disconnected from my essence. So I don't even go there. So yeah, so for me, everything that I do is natural. I don't do anything to enhance anything because again, I am very connected to, to God and to, my soul, my spirit. And so it's always been my intention to do things naturally. And so, for example, some practices that you can do with shamanism is, journeying. So you can practice, there's different shamanic practitioners that you could work with. And I would say if you decide to work with a shaman, make sure that they're actually trained in shamanism and that they've been trained by elders and not literally not just one time, but literally they've been spending years or, quite a bit of time working with them. Cause I know there's some shamans out there that they call themselves shamans. But they literally spend one day with the shaman, and that's not enough. That's literally not enough to really understand how shamanism works. So definitely, again, be very discreet and mindful when working with shamans because not everybody that's a shaman is necessarily a real shaman, or they're not have the best intentions. So it's very important to be very discreet. There's one person that I've been learning from who is a shaman, but she's also a therapist. So for me, that feels more balanced because she understands how the psyche works. But she also understands, the whole spiritual side and how they're connected. So for me, that's been very helpful to understand that and learning how to journey, and figure out who your power animals are. And just learning about that world and how to bring, messages or guidance from that world into your awakened life to help create a more balanced, more grounded life for you. And of course, I couldn't create this video and not talk about Carl Jung because Carl Jung is one of my my guides. I mean, I'm joking, but if he could be a guide, he would because his work is awesome. If you don't know who Carl Jung is, he was a Swiss psychiatrist that kind of changed the way that, therapy and psychotherapy function, where he kind of acknowledged the soul. He started to acknowledge more, that there was an unconscious mind operating and that, there's a whole world for the soul and that alchemy is something that we deal with every day. So, that his work has been very important to me to understand myself better. And one of the things that he is known for is dreams. So, his work is all about understanding your unconscious mind and what's operating in your unconscious mind. And one of the ways that he does that is through dreams, because in our dreams, we get messages, from our unconscious mind, every day. I mean, whether you remember your dreams or not, we're always receiving messages. And when you can start to understand that world, then you start to understand how that world impacts your reality. So I definitely recommend looking up his work. His work has been life-changing for me. And I mean, there's so much to learn about him and his work. And there's a lot of even other scholars and authors that talk about his work to help you understand it a little bit more easily. So there's just so much information about his work and how you could use your work on your, in your spiritual path. And of course, last but not least, the last tool or process that I work with that helped me create a more balanced, grounded spiritual path is working with archetypes. So basically, archetypes are actually created or discovered by Carl Jung, which is a really good way to end this video. So Carl Jung discovered these archetypes, and archetypes basically are patterns that repeat throughout time, throughout history and time. And these patterns have tendencies that they tend to follow into. So to try to kind of simplify it. So for example, if you think about astrology and the zodiac signs are kind of similar to archetypes because, there's 12 main archetypes, but then there's like way more archetypes. But just to keep it simple, I'm going to make a video about this in the future. Everything comes from archetypes. So even astrology comes from archetypes. Like everything in this planet, in existence, originates from archetypes. So that means that archetypes are literally the gateway to the soul. So if you're looking to connect within, to go within, to learn more about yourself, archetypes are one of the most powerful tools you can use and work with to do that. Because when you do that, when you start to understand the archetypes that operate in the unconscious mind, because that's where they operate in the unconscious mind. So you may not know that, a specific archetype is operating in your life, but that doesn't mean that, it's not there. So when you can understand how archetypes operate and how they operate in your daily life and how they're impacting you, you can start to understand the patterns and tendencies they could fall into, and you can use that to transform your life, to create a life that feels more balanced and more whole for you. So the really awesome thing is that I actually work with archetypes. I work with archetypes not only in my spiritual coaching, but I also work with them in branding. So if you're interested in learning about this kind of stuff, you're in the right place. And I do actually have a test that I created, an archetype test that you can take. And I'll post the link below. So when you take the test, you'll get one of your top archetypes. And so then you'll get a beautiful report that I designed just for you. And in the report, you'll get more information about that archetype. And then you also receive guidance on how to work with that archetype. And if you're looking to work with that archetype to transform your brand, then you'll receive guidance on that as well. So this is really powerful stuff. And so I highly recommend that you take the test and so you can receive, first gain clarity on what your archetype is, and then receive that beautiful report that will help you understand your archetypes. And that is a really good way to get started if you're looking to go within and again, do that more of that inner work, more of that grounded, move forward with that grounded spiritual path. So I highly recommend that. And with that, I will end this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.